What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. You see, we're back here in the studio here. So it's just too hot outside. It's too hot outside, so I had to come into some air. We're going to be talking about the speech last night, the address to the nation that Trump did. Trying to talk about what he went through, and my thoughts on it. I have taken a little bit of time to look through some of the documents that was put out. I admittedly I didn't go through a lot, but I did do through some, especially around the Chinese interference talks. And it's just I'm not concluding what he was concluding. So we're going to talk about this, talk about the whole speech really a little bit, and yeah, so thank you very much for joining me here on the channel. If you are new, welcome. If you'd like to check out more from the channel, please do so. Consider subscribing, like, share, comment, all that good stuff to get more videos in front of more people. If you'd like to check out videos from my other channels, you have Drummer Play Puzzling there. If you want to do the same over there, subscribe and all that stuff, that'd be amazing. All of that's free for you, helps out the channels tremendously. If you want to go further, you have Patreon up there, $2 a month to support any of the channels that you would like to help grow those channels, help grow Patreon, help grow JMD Nation, and contribute to that growth how you would like to. And then, of course, there's the link for the merch. All right, I have merch for every single channel now. And if you are a Patreon member, you get a discount on the merch. So even more reason to become a Patreon member. But either way, any support you give is very much appreciated, and I thank you very much. And if you are returning, you're freaking amazing. All right? I will tell you that every time, or at least try to. I don't think I've not said it, but a couple of times maybe. But anyways, you're freaking amazing. Welcome back. Keep coming back because you're what makes JMD Nation. Okay, so in the address last night, I mean, right on the surface was talking about the fact that you had a couple of like ABC, NBC, a couple of channels, stations, decide not to cover this, and I think he even pointed it out at some point, tried to sort of make a little jab, and make it like they don't want to cover, they're complicit in this election problem. No, actually what it was is that, I mean, more than likely what it was is that they're just not complicit in the concerns over your lies. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there was a degree of anytime anything like this happens. Okay, if it is known to just be a straight, which most of the time addresses to the nation are really non-politicized. It's about some sort of major thing that's going on that needs to be addressed, like in a way that is, not partisan in any kind of way. It's something that of concern, of security, or something like that. Although I can see the argument of, well, this is election security, but it's election security in the means of his complete partisan opinion of it. That has been litigated out over and over and over again, even to the point that some stations were sued over some of that stuff back, after 2020, like Fox News over the Dominion stuff, and they lost that, lawsuit. So even Fox News, it seems, tiptoed around a little bit in even their like after the fact talk about it. But again, anytime anything like this is laid out, these stations to interrupt, okay, and present someone like the president or whatever, they have to take in, what potentially could be said and all the rumors that was being talked about, and whether or not it was in their best interest on a legal standpoint to actually address this, or should they just let him say what he's going to say and then talk about it afterwards, bring up clips or whatever, to make sure that they're following within the legal standards so that they can't get sued for the president of the United States getting out there and fucking throwing out all kinds of lies, which he is known to do. So that's more or less what happened there. But anyway, okay, so the first 5 minutes, he's doing his typical little pat on the back, his quote unquote accomplishments that he thinks he's made. It started out sounding like a rally speech, and I'm like sitting here going, what is the world is going on here? Why are we doing a rally speech? I thought this was supposed to be like specific, on the point of or whatever. But then after that 5 minutes, he then proceeds to go into what this was all about. which we had heard of what it was supposed to be about. And that was, of course, the 2020 elections and declassifying the FBI and CIA documentation and stuff that was done. And understandably, this was by investigation by his own departments, okay, because he was president. Okay, a lot of this documentation was done in 2020 before the elections. These were investigations that were being done before the elections, and especially around the interference parts. Okay, the China and stuff, and what we're also going to talk about the Russia, which he did not talk about. All of this stuff was done by his own departments, his own administration. That at that time had stated, yeah, there's information, there's concerns about, data information that's being potentially, gotten, even if maybe through hacks or whatever the case, or, nefarious avenues that they may have gotten information. But as far as actually using that information or the intent to use that information for interference, there's nothing to show or lead, no evidence to show or lead that is the case. And that's exactly what this information, what was declassified from what I read so far, is saying. As a matter of fact, the CIA, one of the intelligence brief things that was released, talking about the concerns of this, was stating out, this is way it was playing out Russia against China. Okay. And it was, a matter of fact, it had a whole section about Russia, had a whole section, well, actually a couple of sections about Russia, a couple of sections about China, broken down in different ways. And funny enough, the redactions, okay, in this document, most of the redactions was actually around China. Okay, where they were not actually allowing it to be seen what was being said in here about it. But what you could see, what was being unredacted and shown, was that as far as China was concerned, okay, yes, that they had access potentially to voter information that they may have collected in some sort of way, even potentially to some degree through hacking in some systems or whatever. And mostly through campaigns. Okay, they were accessing potentially presidential campaign information through the lack of security in those campaigns. Even more so, really, from what I could see around policy, because every country would be, when deciding whether or not they want to who is being presented or who is looking like they are going to be front runners or whatever the case, the more likelihood of winning an election. They want to know how that person is going to, work policy wise for them, whether it's going to be to their benefit or their detriment, or, in a negative way, positive way, how you want to look at it. And clearly, of course, this document was stating out that China, was very much against President Trump because of his first term. As strong as he was on, tariffs and stuff, he was just like, attack China. China's such a problem, blah, blah, blah. Clearly, they had a problem with Trump. And so they were concerned around policies, especially internal campaign policies, more so than even what's being broadcasted, verbally out in the open and bluntly. As to whether or not they were going to be, to what degree policies that were being driven internally were going to go against and be a problem for China, for Beijing, and in international affairs. And so, I mean, yes, every country does this. Okay, this is nothing new. Our intelligence has always known that they've done this, but the degree of collecting information. And while you can argue that even the collecting of that information is a concern, and also there was nothing to show of what degree of information was given. I mean, voter data is openly known. Like there's a degree of voter data that is openly and publicly known, and then there's a layer of more personal things that is not just publicly known. So I mean, to just say that they collected data, we don't know that this is just data that is publicly known, that anybody can actually access, that they might could use, and doesn't even mean that they actually use concerning elections. It could be used for multiple reasons, for even like whatever, catfishing, advertising, pushing stuff, products on people, whatever. They never know what information can be used for. But to go to the next level and say that that this country is using that data to then literally interfere in the voting process, in the election process, in the counting process. There was just no indication there, and that's what these documents are showing. Is like there is nothing to indicate that there was actual intent by China to use this information in a way that would quite literally affect the elections, affect the outcomes of the elections, or even affect, like, directly interfere whatsoever in any kind of way. And that's just on China, though, and that's what Trump he concentrated on, was in this speech last night, was only China. But the same document also refers to Russia and the degree of Russia influence in data collecting and stuff that they would have done, and the fact that Russia was actually trying to go against Biden and trying to promote Trump with whatever data they had collected. But he never talked about that. He didn't bring up Russia. Okay? Because Russia was trying to put out information about Biden and his family and stuff that would, whether it was true or false, they were putting out campaign and strategic information, or, around social media, same as China, that would actually be detrimental to Biden and his campaign. So when you actually look at this documentation, it's stating that, yes, Russia is pro-Trump, China is pro-Biden, or at least anti-Trump. And if I'm looking at this, I'm going, well, I mean, to what degree either might be able to influence the American public. Again, information that would be used before election to try to interfere, try to influence, manipulate, put out ads, memes, things on social media or whatever that would help to influence a percentage of Americans to go against, what they wanted them to go against. To the degree of any of that may have been affected, I mean, I'm sorry, it kind of probably more than likely nulls each other out. When you've got, I mean, it's going to wind up just equaling out. So there shouldn't really be any, as far as pre-election, influence in any kind of way. It just doesn't make any sense. China there's no evidence in any of the documents I've seen so far, and from what I've concluded from other people that have looked through even deeper into these documents than I have, that it does not indicate whatsoever, which Trump tried to kind of be flamboyant and overplay that, oh, China was interfering. There was no intent. By these documents, there was intelligence, no intent of China for what information they might have collected to actually quite literally interfere or have any effect on the elections directly. Okay. Again, if there is a country, and I've stated this over and over and again, there's a country that quite literally has a direct effect on our elections, federal and state, local elections, okay? Like, quite deeply, all right? we don't need to look any further than Israel. Period. The Israeli lobby and Israel itself has planted so many people within Washington and within media, whether it's actual media, social media, commentators, independent media. They have placed people all within American social diaphragm or whatever, and Washington to manipulate and money, millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of money pushed into campaigns to disenfranchise and promote one candidate over another or whatever. And they have done this over and over and over again for decades. Okay. If there is any investigation into a foreign government influencing and affecting our elections, there's no bigger government, no bigger entity than Israel. So I don't know why even pointing out the Russia, China, and whoever else, non-state actors. He even pointed out, I think, North Korea. Like what? No, there's Venezuela, because he brought up voting machines, which we're about to talk about. And there's just no further sorry, that did not mean for that to black out. No, nothing to be taken more than that. Then he went on to voting machines and tried to equate that, okay, you should be concerned about these voting machines because there's evidence to show that other countries, Venezuela, Maduro, that they have been able to hack and manipulate these types of machines, these types, not the exact machine, but the types of machines, in manipulating their elections. And there's, I mean, what I saw documents that were stating, like, there's, information about Venezuela from like 2004 to 2024 or 2009, 23, whatever, a whole, decades long span of or 2 decades, I guess, of quote unquote information about how they, manipulated, or to do a degree, what. And trying to state that, okay, because other countries and this possibility of this happening, then you should then conclude that, yes, definitely, it not only can it happen, but that should also make you conclude that it for certain has happened here. And while, yes, I'm sorry, in this age of electronics, okay, there is to a degree that there's nothing that can not be touched in some sort of way, can be, hacked, activated, backdoored into, or whatever. But understand that not all of those activities can just be done. It's not easily done, especially not from like long ass distances away. Okay, not other countries are being able to come directly hack into this particular machine and manipulate and everything back with, especially without it being noticed. Okay, yes, there's potential that you could argue some sort of close local hacking could potentially happen, faster and easier than, especially like overseas or something. But again, the likelihood of that happening through all and not being seen, not being noticed, or something being flagged because of all the different processes, all the different mechanisms that every single location, or especially the most concerned locations for the administration, clearly, in the degree that they do the counting and verify upon verify the machines, the numbers, the whether it's the actual machine numbers to other degrees of counting, other machines that they use also to count, to hand counting, like in Georgia. Everybody keeps throwing up. I even had somebody in one of my other videos the other day immediately, we know it's stolen, like Georgia, etc. Blah 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 blah. Georgia, because that was all where the Dominion like focus was before. Not only were they able to, there was a large degree of different avenues, multiple counts that they did in Georgia. Okay. From the machines to other machines that they used to literally hand counting them to, over. That's the reason why they allow, yes, they give initial wins and say it looks like this person won, no problem, but the continued counting and validation of election votes goes on for weeks in a lot of places across the United States. That's the reason why you don't send electorates to Washington to verify, to actually cast those electric votes for the Electoral College until middle December. There's a whole month and a half span there where all of these different locations and giving the maximum amount of time for all these locations to go over in multiple, especially if there's any concerns around anything, or anything that is flagged and comes up and they have to re-verify and verify again. There is such an integral process that happens in voting in the United States, that the degree, again, it's been litigated over and over and over again, to the degree that elections have any kind of interference or that there is some sort of elector fraud, voter fraud. It is so minute, so small percentage. And even to what degree there is, most of the time it is found and identified, okay, and is removed. It will not affect the outcome of the election, okay. It's absolutely ridiculous, and that's the reason why case after case after case after case that Trump and his team tried to put before the courts, 60 cases, wound up, they got completely laughed out of many of the courts because there was no evidence and they had no backing and there was nothing to prove, because the states themselves were giving like, okay, there's nothing here. You keep claiming, but there's nothing here, and we're showing and proving that our process is accurate and that there is no degree that in any kind of way would even minusculely affect the outcome of the election whatsoever. So it's just not there. And it's sad that we are 6 years out and we're still trying to even talk about this shit. Then he goes on to talk about Michigan and, trying to get specific around the Michigan stuff, about, voter registration fraud. And whatever. I don't know all the details about Michigan and the voter registration stuff, the team that he was accusing people, the group or whatever, of going out there and registering people to vote that didn't exist or were whatever the case. Okay. Fine. If there was some sort of election, voter registration fraud happening and it can be investigated and something done about it, they arrested, do time, penalties, whatever the case, fine, whatever. But understand the election registration fraud, again, does not equate to voter fraud, okay? Because most of the time just because you're registered, it's just you register a fake person. Does not mean that person is going to go to vote. Or even to the degree that the idea is that somebody, say, I guess MAGA would argue, well, that's where an illegal immigrant is going to go and vote. Or somebody that doesn't have a U.S. citizenship will go and vote. They have to prove that they are a U.S. citizen. Most places do have some degree of photo ID or some degree of ID that they must show. The Save Act thing is bogus. Okay, there are several locations all over the country. Yes, there are some degrees where they have to prove one way or another. Some are a little bit more lenient, some are more strict, but nevertheless, they would have to. They're coming to vote. It's not like you just willy nilly walk up and say, "My name is." Okay, we're not Eminem here. You have to actually show. They have to literally look over their voter rolls, identify you. You have to sign. You have, and then even if to say that this voter does vote, right? Let's just say that somebody does vote. They have our signatures, our registration signatures on record. Okay, they have to identify those signatures with the person that come in. The whoever registered the vote has to then turn around. Uh, Whoever actually shows up to vote for that registration has to actually copy that signature, and those signatures are put against each other, and identified as whether or not. I mean, there's so many. Even to the degree you say that yes, this person went and voted. Okay, but how much would that? To what degree, though? Again, that person was bold enough. You're telling me that all these people that so quote unquote was uh, fraudulently registered to vote. Every single one of those that were fraudulently registered to vote, somebody showed up to vote for. That's one thing. But then they were bold enough to actually do so. But then what I would argue probably was a very small percentage of those fraudulently registered actually might have attempted to show up and vote. Whether or not that, even if they carried it out and say the signature process or whatever process that they had to verify or validate themselves to even vote, and they got past that and they casted a vote, and then when the vote was cast, they then would go back and verify the information on the machine or the information on the written, if it was done by a tabulation or whatever. Like, they have to go verify these things, and that passed the verification process, and then multiple layers of checks and balances that all these locations have, and that ballot of that vote was casted and accepted. To what degree did that actually manipulate or change the election? It's just not feasible. It's just not feasible to argue that in any kind of way. All of those different layers actually then concludes that voter fraud actually happened. It's just not feasible. And then of course he goes into the Save America Act, pushing for what I talked about before was going to be his ultimate push, and that was to try to get the Save America Act passed. Trying to apply pressure through all of these quote unquote evidential declassified documents that he knows that his base is not going to fucking go look through. Okay, they're not. They're just going to accept what he says as evidence and as truth, and they're going to rah out there. Trump did it. He presented it. He said it on TV. It's happening. So they're not going to look, and they're going to get all over social media. They're going to probably call and bless the fuck out of their local senators, representatives, and I mean, even if they do that, they might not even really do that. But they think they're going to. He thought that this was all going to apply pressure on the Senate to pass that appropriations bill that the SAVE Act has been slid into. The Senate that John Thune himself has behind the scenes apparently said that there are not enough Republicans in the Senate to agree to this. That there are quite a few Republicans in the Senate that straight up do not like Trump enough to actually pass this, to bend the knee and pass this. He does not have the support, so it's dead on arrival. And there's no degree in any of this documentation that, and even Trump in this speech, okay, which admittedly was very non-Trump. He, what was laid out on the prompters, he mostly stuck to. I mean, it was very unlike Trump. The whole thing was very boring, low energy. He didn't even sound good. It was something like it was in his throat. I even mentioned that in the when we live, that it sounded like something was in his throat that he couldn't get cleared out for a little bit there. You could, it almost was like he was told in the sternest way possible, maybe even slapped on the hand a little bit. I don't know. Maybe that's the reason why his hand keeps getting bruised up so fucking bad. That to stick to the prompter and do not go off course. That if he went off course, it was not going to hold. That he could not just spew what comes to his head, which they know is a bunch of bullshit. They already knew what was on that prompter was pretty bad. But if he went off kilter and went on his, typical Trumpian way of spewing, what comes to his head out, it was going to go off the rails. Again, the reason why you had, the likes of like ABC and NBC and what few others didn't actually show this, the concerns of just that, not knowing whether or not he would completely go off the cuff. But he did. He's pretty much stayed right in lane. And I can see why. A lot of times in a lot of other situations, they do let him go off the cuff, because when he is straightforward on a teleprompter, he is boring as fuck. He has no character. He has no personality when he's just reading. It's like, and he sees a particular word and he knows he wants to go off on that word, but he also, in the back of his mind, apparently had been drilled enough to be like, oh shit, I'm not supposed to say this. It was rough. That speech was rough. But it was full of complete BS. And everything that he presented it as if they were releasing disclassified information that was proving that we should be so concerned about our elections that we must save this Save America Act, or the 2026 elections are going to be rigged. And it's just not true. And he's setting this all up. Even with all the numbers he was spewing now, China, the 200-something million of information, although, again, there's no evidence that they even, no intent whatsoever, no evidence that they actually interfered whatsoever in elections. Or the quote-unquote voter rolls that they've gotten from the 20 states that just, bent over and let Trump ram it up their ass to get sorry, I did it again. Voter information. And the fact that they've quite literally sued the other 30 states to try to get that information. And so far, half of those states have won in court. The Trump administration is 0 for 15 so far on trying to get those voter rolls, because there's no constitutional support for that. Because the federal government is not supposed to have that. And these are sensitive. They're trying to get all information, sensitive information that, you could argue what he was trying to present is what, possibly could have been what China was getting that they want. Well, why do they want that information? You have to question this. Why is the Trump administration so determined to get all of your personal and sensitive information? around your voter information. I mean, you have to question it. Why? And them trying to state that, that way we can they want this information so that they can then give this log of names that are disqualified, and so that if anything happens and they lose in some position, place, location, whatever, then they can try to say, oh, well, see, we told you that these people were disqualified, but yet their names are here, they voted, so that fraud, you didn't remove them, fraud. See, elections are rigged. Even though state after state after state after state, when getting this information back to them, has stated over and over again, yeah, what you're saying here is not true. These names are actual citizens and they're actually registered. And why are we being told to remove them? I'm talking about deep red states, deep red localized sections, localized election officials pushing back on these voter rolls that is being sent back to the states from the federal government. And they're going, wait, I know this person. They are here. They're alive. They voted. They are registered. There's nothing wrong here. Why are we being told to remove them? Again, even the argument around dead people voting. Dead people don't vote. Dead people on the registers. If they're dead, I mean, people die every day. It's bound to happen. Even the day before, or even the day of voting, somebody could die. Doesn't mean they showed up because they're dead. I mean, it's ridiculous. All the arguments here are ridiculous. But it's all to sow, dissent and confusion and questioning around our elections, so that in the case of in the fact that poll after poll after poll is showing that in November, it is very much looking like it's going to be the largest blue fucking wave we may have ever seen before. And that there's a good chance that the House and the Senate at this point, because of the continuation of this administration and what they are doing on every single fucking front, that there is more and more and more sentiment in the United States from voters and people, Democrat and even fucking Republicans alike. Independents even more so. I mean, that's the biggest concern, is independents. There are a growing number of independents that are seeing problems and issues with this administration and what's being said and what's being done. And poll after poll after poll again is coming out like the House is going to be overturned. The Senate is very likely to be overturned, in like a larger way than maybe ever seen before. Now, what actually happens, it might not be so much. And I can only assume that that's what the administration is hoping for, that they can manipulate enough and make enough accusations enough that in this particular location or this particular location, they can hope to get to shorten that separation as much as they can, so that they can say, okay, well, see, there was only this many vote difference, and we said that in this location that there's an issue with, these amount of people that potentially could be, you needed to remove and you didn't remove, or blah, 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 blah. They're going to try to point in all kinds of different directions, in every way, to state that there was election fraud, and try to make. Hi, of course. I'm sorry. I apologize. The last 5 minutes of my original recording, I accidentally, you'll see, I think I left there for a second. You saw and heard that I muted my mic. I accidentally reached over and touched the mute on my mic. And the last 5 minutes, you couldn't hear me. So I'm going to quickly try to tell you what I said in that last 5 minutes. I was talking about the fact that Trump and the administration is going to do everything they can to make any kind of argument and point in any kind of direction to claim that it's rigged and to go against election technique. It's say that the election doesn't it lacks integrity or whatever. And what I went on to say was that I truly hope that every location across the entirety of the United States in November, that they have everything lined up, all P's and Q's. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican districts, because yes, the administration might be targeting right now the Democrat leaning stronghold districts across the nation, and trying and to make the arguments, because that's where they would most easily try to make the arguments for themselves in their mind around election integrity, election fraud, blah 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 blah. But even if you're a red district, okay, and there is a chance or possibility that your particular district somehow, okay, flips blue, you also need to have your P's and Q's, because I'm telling you, if somehow your particular district suddenly goes blue for whatever reason, and the administration go, wait a minute, wait, I won that. Trump goes, I won that district, I won that county, I won that, fraud. Don't think that they want to throw you under the bus, because this administration, Trump, has thrown Republicans under the bus multiple times, throwing them out as rhinos or whatever the case. Oh, you just don't like me. You allowed this to happen. So everybody across the entirety of the United States needs to make sure that they have everything lined up, and every process is done as accurately as possible. I mean, again, I already think that it's done as accurately as it possibly can. I, think that we have some of the best elections in the world. And, the carrying out the procedures done from location to location to location, while they might be different and they might range in how they're accomplished, but I do think that they are done in those locations the best way possibly. I mean, yes, you can always potentially improve, and I think every location does make some sort of effort to improve here and there as much as they possibly can, modernizing or just making it a little bit easier, whatever. Although again, there are some state governments that, yes, have clearly tried to do some gerrymandering, tried to remove locations, tried to make it harder in certain instances. But as far as the actual election officials, I think they do the best they possibly can and are as accurate as they possibly can and hold the integrity of our elections the best they can, in most instances, if not all. So again, it needs to make sure that everything is done as close to as perfect as possible. In a way, and even though I would love for Democrats, progressives, independents, whatever, to win as much as possible, to like the degrees that, making it as the blue wave is as large as it possibly can. But in any case where the election results are close, make sure that everything lines up, which I'm pretty sure it will. But nevertheless, to make it as impossible as can be for this administration to make fraud claims in any location. But anyways, that was pretty much what I said. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm not sure whether or not I said it as eloquently as the first time. I don't know if I said it the first time eloquently, but anyway, thank you very much for joining me, and let me know what you think. And until next time, peace. ClearTalk, I'm out.